What is up, SuperFlex Super Friends? Back live on a SuperFlex Super Friday night. Coming at you from dynastyleaguefootball.com. Graciously hosting this Ask Me Anything show that we've been doing. This is episode 5 now. We've done 4 of these previously. Talked a lot about a lot of different stuff for all things Superflex. And this week, I mean, we've got football. We actually have like real football to talk about. This stops being quite so. It's not quite as uh, hypothetical anymore. We have actual football to talk about. I've got the Lions and the Bills on TV right now. Yesterday we had what was it, Washington and the Patriots and the Eagles. Who'd the Eagles play? I already forgot. I need some people in this chat to help me out with this. I didn't get to watch much of much football yesterday, but I saw enough. I know that now we have to think about Quez Watkins, at least for the next week. We're going to have to consider him as a kind of an end of the bench type of guy for a while. That's just kind of the nature of it in preseason, isn't it? I mean, you get you get those monster games from somebody, and we've got to talk about them until somebody else does it. So, yeah, right at the moment, Quez Watkins is the wide receiver you want in Philadelphia. I mean, Devonta Smith with the injury, Jalen Reagor is, I don't know, a bust. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, we're for the moment, it's the Quez Watkins show. And I'm looking forward to when things normalize a little bit and we can get back to Jalen Reagor and Devonta Smith and Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, maybe even Travis Fulgham. Let's mix him in a little bit too. So, lots to talk about on this Friday night. And we already have some questions, so let's get right into it. Dylan, hey, John, who are some of your favorite quarterback startup values in a Superflex 6-point passing touchdown league? So 6 point. This is interesting. This is something that's not all that probably not discussed enough. The difference between 4 point and 6 points in the Superflex league. What does that mean? What does that do for the quarterbacks? And I mean, I think the big answer is it knocks down the rushing quarterbacks a little bit. It elevates those pocket passers just a little bit, and I think that we still value those rushing touchdowns, right? I mean, at this point, when we're talking 6 points, a touchdown's a touchdown. That's the nice thing about it. Personally, I think that it inflates quarterback scoring maybe a little too much, but I mean, whatever wrinkle we've got, like two QB leagues is a lot to me. It feels like a lot. 2 tight end leagues versus tight end premium, man, that's something that we could talk about, maybe even here tonight. We'll see. We've got a lot, kind of a there are a lot of different formats, and each one, it really just kind of presents a different set of like a different strategy, essentially. So 6-point passing touchdowns, like I said, to me, it kind of is a little too much scoring for the quarterbacks, but that's kind of what makes it fun. The fact that you have to strategize, the fact that you have to consider, what does this mean for the quarterback position? And what does this mean to the overall player pool? Because like we always say, Superflex isn't a quarterback game. It always makes me laugh when somebody wants to talk about Superflex and they start comparing quarterbacks. This is not a quarterback game. It's a quarterback-driven game. Quarterbacks have the most power, quarterbacks have the most value, quarterbacks have the most scarcity, and quarterbacks just score the most. But this is not a game about quarterbacks. This is a game about navigating quarterbacks in relation to the rest of the player pool. And, 6-point passing touchdowns, it elevates all the quarterbacks that much more. So now instead of looking at, Lamar Jackson, is he going to rush for, 15 touchdowns? Just hypothetically, let's give him 15. It's a pretty big difference, right? When we're getting only 4 points for a passing touchdown, and now we're getting those extra 2 points for each rushing touchdown. Lamar Jackson's value is significantly higher because of that. He just kind of drops back a little bit when we start talking about 6-point passing touchdowns. So, I think that there's a lot of strategy there. I think there's a lot of context for us to discuss when it comes to, the difference between 4-point and 6-point. But I think for the moment, let's just acknowledge the fact that there is a difference. It's very different strategy. And that's where Dylan's question kind of comes from is, like, what does that difference look like? All of a sudden, there's some quarterbacks with a little bit more value than they would have had in a simple 4-point passing touchdown league. So, what is that? Who are some of those players who all of a sudden get that kind of that bump that people might not necessarily recognize? Especially if you haven't yet acknowledged the difference between 4-point and 6-point. I know it's only a 2-point difference, but it adds up fast. So, all that being said, let's get back to the question here from Dylan. And just in terms of guys who I think are good values, really kind of those middle round guys, who, especially the guys that you think of more as pocket passers. And that's why we see, kind of depressed ADP in just a normal 4-point touchdown league. Guys like Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, those guys they're not super mobile quarterbacks. And in a lot of cases, besides the age, of course, that's kind of what's driving their value and kind of driving it down right at the moment. So I think those are some very good ones. I think that, you're probably for instance, if your league was going off of ADP and saw, Kirk Cousins with a 4th round ADP and Matt Ryan with a 5th round ADP, that's assuming 4-point passing touchdowns. All of a sudden, their passing touchdowns are worth just as much as Lamar Jackson's rushing touchdown. We start talking about, total touchdowns. We're not worried about how they're getting them anymore because it's the same scoring either way. So all of a sudden, you start thinking about, is Lamar Jackson going to run for 15 and then throw for 15? Something like that. And it should be a little bit better than that for Lamar Jackson. He should be closer to 40 total touchdowns, but just hypothetically, let's give him 30, 15 of each, and Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 30, but he's not going to rush for any. All of a sudden, I mean, you're still getting the rushing yards from Lamar Jackson, plus Lamar Jackson's younger. So that kind of puts him over the top. But, I think that it gets a lot closer, right? Just by the number, just by the dirty math. All of a sudden, Kirk Cousins is awfully close in fantasy production, projected fantasy production to Lamar Jackson. So, those are some guys that I would definitely look at. And there are a few guys who I think are just kind of values just in general. I think Tua Tagovailoa is a great value, kind of regardless of the scoring. I think that he probably gets a little bit of a bump in 6-point passing touchdowns. We don't think of him as a rushing quarterback. I think that he might surprise some people as far as that goes, but I overall I think that he's going to end up being more of a pocket passer type, and I think that there's an opportunity for him to take a major step in 2021. And, if you're getting those extra 2 points, I think that it makes him that much more viable. Daniel Jones is another one that I like quite a bit. Sam Darnold is a good one. We kind of talked last week, previous couple weeks, in fact, about the New Orleans Saints, and without Michael Thomas, what does that offense look like? And who makes the most sense to be the starting quarterback for that team? And it's kind of feeling like Taysom Hill makes way more sense. Until you can fix the pass catching options for Jameis Winston. But if Jameis Winston ends up winning that job, I think that he's going to see very depressed value in drafts the rest of the off season here. And I think that 6-point passing touchdown, that it's essentially a quarterback premium is kind of what I call it. I think he's going to benefit from that quarterback premium a little bit. And I think that it should bring his value back up a little bit higher than what it was. So yeah, that's a great question. And, to me, honestly, what it really does is 6-point passing touchdowns should push all quarterbacks up a little bit. Like if you think of it kind of like a set of stairs, those rushing quarterbacks, the Lamar Jacksons, Kyler Murrays, Taysom Hill, guys like that, they take one step up, and the rest of them take a second step up. They just get a little bit more of a premium for their passing touchdowns all of a sudden. So, I mean, to me, the entire quarterback position probably is a little bit undervalued at that point. And they should all kind of take a step up. But, particularly the more the pocket passer type of guys who, we can probably count on for somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 touchdowns. And I think Kirk Cousins and Matt Ryan are great examples of that. Personally, those are two of my favorites anyways. Let's see. Bob found someone else who's not at the expo yet. Yep. Still here in Denver, Colorado. Not doing the expo this time. So, everybody who is going, have fun. Everybody who is not going and who is still here to talk SuperFlex tonight. It's awesome to be with you and, to get to talk with my super friends tonight while they're all out partying in Canton, Ohio. Mike Washington, Michael Gallup, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Darnell Mooney. Pick 2 of the 4 in PPR Dynasty. All right. So I'm going to start with Darnell Mooney. I know that he's taken a lot of heat right now on Twitter, on fantasy Twitter. And I get it. I don't totally get it. I mean, the guy just pushed Anthony Miller completely out of town, right? Like, who else is really there? Obviously Allen Robinson is your alpha. Obviously, we're hoping for a little bit of a breakout from Cole Kmet from the tight end position. I mean, you don't have Tariq Cohen. You're not going to for a while. Kind of, I don't know what else is there who else is there to catch passes? Yeah, I mean, Darnell Mooney, and the reason that Anthony Miller is no longer a member of the Chicago Bears, by the way, is because of the play of Darnell Mooney, both as a rookie and so far, in the offseason and in the preseason. that one, I don't totally understand where the where the skepticism is coming from with Darnell Mooney. I don't totally understand, and I can sift through the tweets. It's still just it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I know that part of the issue is, having that later round wide receiver, day 3 draft capital. And I really don't believe that that matters quite as much to NFL franchises as people like to think. And that's kind of at any position, and this kind of goes back to, for a long time. So Chris Carson is one of my all-time favorite fantasy football players. It was one of my first deep sleeper finds. I saw, I watched him in the preseason of his rookie year and was just like, man, this guy's special. This guy's something else. And, he had a shortened rookie season. He broke the leg and ended up missing most of the season. But I mean, when he had the job, he had a pretty significant role early on and looked great with it. I called him the electric playmaker. I mean, he was one of those guys. He can make you miss. He can run through you. He can run over you. He catches passes out of the backfield. He just makes things happen. And then, it looks like he's going to be on track to come back and become the starter. And then they draft Rashad Penny in the first round. And so now all of a sudden it's okay, well, that's it for Chris Carson because they just use a first round pick on somebody else. And my feeling on it all along was, why does it matter who was the first round pick? Chris Carson was a 6th round pick. Rashad Penny was a first round pick. Like, strip away the names for a second and just say, we spent a first round pick and a 6th round pick on running backs. We got an all-pro running back and a very good backup. Does it matter which one was which? It shouldn't. It shouldn't matter. It should, we should just be saying, this is what was spent. This is what we got, And I feel the same way at the wide receiver position as well. I think Darnell Mooney represents, there was a certain amount of draft capital spent over the course of 2 seasons between Anthony Miller and Darnell Mooney. And, I don't think that it matters too much which of the two was the breakout. So I really don't think that draft capital is nearly as significant, nearly as predictive, nearly as important as people think. So, yeah, I think Darnell Mooney is still on track for a breakout season here in 2021. I'll also take Michael Gallup. It's a tough one. I mean, Christian Kirk to me is kind of just not even in the conversation anymore. A lot of people are still hoping for Mike Williams, and I don't like the way. I don't like his role in that offense. It's just it's a little too unpredictable. It's a little too volatile. So for me, Michael Gallup, I think that, I think that there's enough of a target share available to him in that offense. Even with Amari Cooper, even with CeeDee Lamb, I think that Michael Gallup is still in line for around a 15% share, which, that's all we really need. We're asking for, 8 targets a game, something like that. If he's efficient with them, that's all he's going to need to get you the yardage and the touchdown upside to be a startable option for you. Nathaniel Bro, what do you weigh and what is it higher in, and what is higher in priority when determining which quarterbacks to start as you stream within your roster? I thought you were actually asking me about my weight. I was like, wait, there's a Do you promise that that's relevant? I'll sit here and give you the tail of the tape on the SuperFlex dude. But you got you got to tell me that there's some kind of reason that we're asking. All right, so when determining which quarterbacks to start as you stream within your roster, what are we looking for? To me, it's almost entirely, in fact, going to be about matchups. And it's going to be a little tough at the start of the season. We have an idea with these, with these defenses, who's going to be able to, to stop the passing game and who's not. You can somewhat go off of 2020, at least to start. Any players kind of brought in the offseason, it's going to take a little bit of time for a defense to kind of gel and to get that base defense totally set with a new group of players. So, early in the 2021 season, I think a lot of defenses are going to look very similar to what they did in 2020. And then as the season goes on, we kind of start to figure out, which are the teams that have that weakness against quarterbacks and against the passing game. Detroit obviously is just going to be like, they didn't do anything to improve on the league's worst defense. And in fact, I mean, they kind of took some steps backwards offensively, which is going to lead to the defense being on the field more and, being more susceptible to being, getting beaten by a bad matchup, especially when the defensive players are tired. So, from too much time on the field. So, things like that. So to me, it's primarily going to be based on matchups. I mean, I think that you can go a little bit off of, kind of a hot hand type of approach. You can certainly look at that. You can certainly look at, man, this guy has been consistently putting up 20-point games every single week. He's got an okay matchup. If you've got a guy with the 15th best matchup, and then you've got a guy with the 18th best matchup, but the guy with the 15th best matchup, he just took over as a starter, and a guy with the 18th best matchup has been consistently great for 2-3 weeks in a row, something like that. I mean, I think that you can kind of pivot there, but more than anything, I'm going to be looking a lot at matchups, and that's kind of how I'm going to go. That's kind of how I'm going to construct my rankings this year on a weekly basis. So I'm going to look a lot at matchups. I really want to test this theory more than anything. But I mean, we saw it happen. We saw it work, at the end of the 2020 season. So, I think it's going to be a continuation of that going into 2021. I mean, I think that you can also look at things like, the matchup for the running game. I think that that's relevant. If it's a defense that can't stop the run, there's not going to be nearly as much meat on the bone for the quarterback and for the wide receivers. I think that you can look a little bit at, at the over-under for that particular game. You want two offenses who are going to be able to, go toe-to-toe and blow for blow. And, anytime you can find those matchups that look like they're going to be a high-scoring one, that's one that you want to get a piece of. But yeah, to me, the primary tiebreaker is going to be matchups. Dylan, yeah, looking at Baker too. Yeah, I like that one a lot too. The only reason I didn't mention him is because I think that his value, I mean, his value is a little bit too low, but his value can also include His value can also translate in 4-point passing touchdowns as well. I think that he's got enough rushing upside. It's not a ton, but I think that he's a mobile enough passer. But yeah, that's a great one too. I think that Baker's very, very undervalued. Seems like the most likely scenario. You consider the weapons, you consider the system. Finally, we get some continuity in the system. The credibility of the running game, just everything just kind of points to, Baker Mayfield finally giving us that breakout season that we've been looking for. Lamar, what are some good wide receiver 2 to 3 targets as a competing roster in Dynasty? So, what's interesting to me about the wide receiver position is it's so incredibly deep that I don't know that you necessarily have to break them up, into bins of 12, which is kind of what we're doing when we're talking about wide receiver 1s, wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s. To me, they all have roughly the same floor. To be totally honest, some of the guys in the wide receiver, and this is my favorite example, is Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, top end wide receiver 1, almost universally. Like, depending on who you ask, most people are going to put DK Metcalf in that wide receiver 1 category, right? Tyler Lockett ends up being more like a wide receiver 3, maybe even lower than that. And when I think about what they're actually going to do on a weekly basis, first of all, I think that, I think that Tyler Lockett is going to be, when all is said and done, when the dust is cleared, I think that Tyler Lockett is going to be within, call it 4 points a game of DK Metcalf. And that's just the average. I think that, when we go back and look at game logs, I think we're going to see, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 wide receiver 1 weeks from DK Metcalf. And I think that we're probably going to see something like, 6 wide receiver 1 weeks from Tyler Lockett. Obviously, we would rather have DK Metcalf's, 18 points a game than Tyler Lockett's 14 points a game. Obviously, we would rather have 10 wide receiver 1 weeks from DK Metcalf than 6 from Tyler Lockett. But that's when we start to think about the cost, right? The fact that we have to take DK Metcalf probably in the 2nd or 3rd round of a startup, and we get Tyler Lockett somewhere around like the 7th round, I'm just kind of spitballing the ADP. I'll pull it up here in a second. See where you're actually getting these guys. But, the point being that there's not nearly as much difference in their scoring on a weekly basis, especially. There's not enough of a difference in their scoring to justify the difference in ADP. So, so I don't really like to think about them in terms of wide receiver 1s versus wide receiver 2s versus wide receiver 3s. I just think more about like what's their floor, and because I think that they all have a similar floor, and I think that they all have really pretty similar upside as well. And then you start thinking about the cost a little bit, but yeah, I think that those guys, some of the guys that we, quote unquote wide receiver 3 type of guys, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type of guys, that we're going to be able to get pretty late. That kind of it. And by the way, this is what allows us to, to go quarterback early and still get some decent running backs, is the fact that wide receiver is so crazy deep. So, looking at ADP here, man, you're getting Amari Cooper and Allen Robinson in round 6. Those are wide receiver 2 type of guys, like high-end wide receiver 2 type of guys, according to ADP. You're getting those guys in round 6. Round 7, you're getting guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Cortland Sutton, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Robert Woods. I love every single one of those guys. And then when you start talking about guys in the wide receiver 3 range, and this is based on the ADP that we created in July. Not quite done with August's ADP just yet, but we're getting close. But guys in the wide receiver 3 range, all in round 8, Adam Thielen, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy. Those are round 3 guys, or round 8 guys. At the end of round 8, you've got Kenny Golladay, Odell Beckham Jr., Laviska Shenault. Man, like, and then round 9, there's Elijah Moore and Deebo Samuel. Round 10, I don't love the guys in round 10 other than Robbie Anderson at pick 10, 12. Into round 11, Jarvis Landry is there. Terrace Marshall is there. Round 12, Darnell Mooney and Jalen Reagor are both there. Corey Davis in round 13. Like, there's some guys. Man, Brian Edwards in round 14. I mean, now we're getting into wide receiver 5 range, and we're still finding some guys. Brian Edwards, Gabriel Davis. Man, I want to say Amari Rodgers. I just keep expectations low for rookie wide receivers, I guess, but it's really tempting. Round 17, Nico Collins. Like, there are guys just all through your draft. So, it just goes to show, like, you can wait as long as you want, honestly, on wide receivers, and you're going to find some guys who are still going to be, good values for you. You don't even have to do it at wide receiver 2 and 3. I mean, I still think that you probably want somebody in the wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3 range to be your wide receiver 1. But it's just so crazy deep that there's almost no reason to be taking wide receivers before round, 5 or 6. Yeah, Kevin Stefanski at the controls in Cleveland. That's another good point for Baker Mayfield for sure. My man, looking for a buy low young quarterback in my SuperFlex leagues. Any suggestions? Yeah. Back to Tua Tagovailoa. I think that's a good one. His ADP is definitely creeping up there a little bit. His value is creeping up there, and I think that people are starting to catch on a little bit with him. Sam Darnold, I think, could be a very good one. Pretty young. So Daniel Jones in round 6, that could be a pretty good one. I think Sam Darnold in round 7. That's really kind of it for the young wide receivers. They get picked pretty clean. I mean, so in round 12, what's interesting, there's Jordan Love, and then you have both Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. Oh, man. Like, I think that there's some upside there. I would say that probabilities are low that you're going to get, that they're going to get to that upside. But those are some guys to consider, I would say, just to see what happens. I think that you probably want to take a kind of a lot of flyers if you want to go that late. And then you see guys like Kellen Mond in round 14, Davis Mills in round 17, Kyle Trask in round 18. So a few of those type of guys, a few of those flyers. I think that can be a decent strategy. It's just taking up a lot of real estate on your bench at that point. So it's going to be hard to find, young guys with very much upside late. This ADP is really pretty tight at this point, I would say. Mac Jones is going in round 6. And we've talked about that too. The fact that late round quarterback in Superflex, especially Superflex Dynasty, it really kind of looks like we're really kind of talking about like the 5th and 6th round. Like that's late rounds for quarterbacks in Superflex. But there's a few guys there. Mac Jones is still there. Daniel Jones is still there in the 6th round. And then, like I said, Sam Darnold, I think, is a great one in round 7. I think that he absolutely has the opportunity to be a long-term starter in Carolina. So, and then watch for Jalen Hurts too. There's a possibility. We'll see what happens when this new this ADP comes out. I would not be surprised to see Jalen Hurts start to fall a little bit with, as the talk continues and kind of ramps up about Deshaun Watson possibly being traded to Philadelphia. To me, Jalen Hurts is just way too talented to not get a shot somewhere. It might not necessarily be in Philadelphia. And if they have an opportunity to trade for Deshaun Watson at a reasonable price, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't do it. There's about 20 teams around the NFL that should really be in on that. And the fact that Philadelphia is kind of the only one with that type of perspective is a little bit troubling, but I would not fault them at all for making that move. But I still think that Jalen Hurts gets an opportunity somewhere. And then, yeah, Nathaniel, bro, back to you. I bet Zach Wilson is a buy low type of young gun. Yeah, that's a good one too. Let me try and find. So he's round 4. So, he's going ahead of Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, and then some of the older guys, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan. So, round 4, but for the second overall pick, live arm, possibly the best arm talent in this entire draft class. So, and all of a sudden that's a good looking group of wide receivers. I like that one a lot. I like that call a lot. It's just, round 4, it's still not, it's not the type of value we're looking for, is it? Like, we're not quite getting the type of value that we really are hoping to get here. But these young quarterbacks, I mean, you could, in theory, you could possibly get somebody like a Justin Herbert in the first round, and then kind of focus on the wide receiver position in rounds 2 and 3, get some younger guys, and then get back to quarterback and still find a couple, younger guys like Zach Wilson, like Mac Jones, guys like that in the 4th and 5th rounds and beyond. So, there's a strategy there for sure. Being able to, put together the foundation, build the foundation with young quarterbacks, young wide receivers who are going to be there for a while and who are going to, hold the value for you for several years, maintain a production for you for several years while you build up the running back group. That used to be kind of my strategy of choice. And I just kind of found out that, if you've got good enough quarterbacks, it kind of, you don't really have to continue to adhere to the, 3 to 5 year window that we always talk about. Like, you can still win right away if you're good at the quarterback position. So, to be honest with you, I don't think in terms too much of age anymore. And in fact, the quarterback position in particular scares me off a little bit with the young guys. I'm really I don't know about you guys. I don't know how much you've really even thought about this, but I'm kind of struggling with this rookie class because the odds say that at least 2 of those guys are going to bust. Like, historically, that's what happens when we have such a deep class. Typically, we get maybe 50% of the rookie class actually hits. And it means that, like, the bust rate is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40%. So that means two of these guys are going to bust. And then another one is going to be okay, but, not great. Kind of Sam Darnold, you know. So, we really kind of got our hit from Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And, we got our bust obviously from Josh Rosen. And now it's, as much as I was just talking up Sam Darnold, there's also the possibility that Sam Darnold is, just kind of just part of the statistics of this whole thing. He has to be a bust just because we need, one more of these guys to be an official bust. And maybe it's Baker Mayfield too. I mean, I think that Baker Mayfield is probably hit at this point to an extent where I don't know that we would ever call him a bust. But I mean, he might have really kind of plateaued, and that's the type of thing that happens to these rookie classes every year. And it's just got me wondering, it feels like, again, two of these guys have to bust and one of them has to like lightly hit, and then the other two can be big hits. Well, who out of this group of guys, who can possibly bust? I mean, Mac Jones seems like the obvious answer, I suppose, but even then, it feels like he's in a good situation. It sounds like he's looking good so far in camp. It really is a pretty good system with Josh McDaniels. They've churned out a lot of very good quarterbacks. It doesn't always translate outside of Foxborough, but as long as he's in a Patriots uniform, they're not going to let him fail. So it's, I mean, who else is there from this class? And I mean, if we're saying that Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent, there's absolutely no way that he misses. Now all of a sudden we're down to four guys. Two of them have to bust, and only one of them can truly hit. One of them can truly break out. Is it Trey Lance with that rushing ability? We know that can cover blemishes in the passing game, whether they're there or not. It's a little hard to imagine him not being, at least somewhat of a hit. Justin Fields to me is the most complete quarterback in this entire class. With a possible exception, I guess, of Trevor Lawrence. But I mean, Justin Fields with the rushing ability, the ability to make throws off platform, and then just the throws that he can make standing in the pocket. That I can't imagine him not being a hit. And now, so that kind of leaves us with Zach Wilson. And I have a hard time believing that type of arm talent, and he's got the confidence to make the throws. He's got the confidence in his arm. He's still got some mobility. I've always loved his ability to throw off platform, his ability to extend a play and then throw on the run. Man, like Pat Mahomes is the only other guy in this entire league who can do what Zach Wilson does as far as that goes. So, for it not to work for Zach Wilson, it pretty much has to be a mental thing, a football IQ type of thing. And I don't see that as an issue with him either. So again, it's just kind of like, man, so who's supposed to bust out of that group, out of that quarterback class? And I honestly don't know. I honestly just couldn't even guess, because I think all of these guys are going to be great. But historically, the statistics say that not all of them will be. It's a tough one. It's going to be a really interesting one. But yeah, it makes me, like I said, I kind of shy away from those super young quarterbacks like that. I kind of shy away from guys like, rookie quarterbacks, just because of the fact that, there's still a lot unwritten. There's still a lot unknown with them. I've got a question from my guy Zane, who wasn't able to make it to the live chat, but he asked a question earlier today. He said, I just made a trade in a 14-team SuperFlex startup, Jonathan Taylor, for two 2022 firsts and a 2023 first. Initially traded Gibson and 2 pick upgrades. He went from, in the startup, he traded away Antonio Gibson and 413 and 702 for Taylor 513 and 713. So went from Gibson to Taylor and then dropped basically a round in each in 2 rounds of the startup. So like, to me, that feels like pretty good value, really. 413, going from 413 to 513 hurts a little bit, but and I think that Gibson and Taylor are probably a little closer than that, but that's really not bad. And I think that that's probably the type of move that you have to make to get that done. So, Jonathan Taylor's a guy that you like, and or you don't really trust Antonio Gibson. I think that's kind of what it takes to make that move. The tough one is Jonathan Taylor. Giving him up, you do get back 2 2022 firsts and a 2023 first. So technically 3 first-round picks. I don't like to call them that. I don't like to call future firsts. And we've actually talked about that on here, so I won't go too far into that. But essentially, time value, first of all, you're going to get, 300 points, something like that, maybe even more than that, out of Jonathan Taylor this year before you even get to see where those picks are, much less make those picks. So you're already going to be about 300 points in the hole. And, you make those 2 2022 first round picks, and you're trying to make up 300 points, essentially. So, like, you need two guys who are going to score 300 points, essentially, with those 2 picks. And then you get another bite at the apple in 2023. But, the fact that you have to wait that long to see what your return is. Meanwhile, Jonathan Taylor is, scoring fantasy points in 2021, where those draft picks are not. And then, he's also helping make that team make some of those picks later picks. I assume that those are some of their draft picks. They're probably just traded you, their own 2022 first and their own 2023 first. So, Jonathan Taylor's probably going to help them make those picks later picks. It's going to make it that much harder for you to find guys who make up the scoring that you lost by giving up Jonathan Taylor. So, yeah, man, Zane, I love you, man, but I gotta be honest. I don't. I'm not a huge fan of that move. Had another one that I got in a DM. Let me find this real quick. Who was it? Was it you, Dirt Dog? Dirt Dog was asking me about Paris Campbell for a 2023 second round pick, which feels like just fine value, right? Like, that should be good value. The problem is, you look at his roster, he's so freaking loaded at wide receiver. Paris Campbell just never makes it into his lineup, essentially. So, who else? What else do we got? Man, we could always call it early too. We don't have to go the normal 2 hours. I'm all right with it if we're not gonna talk for 2 whole hours here. yeah, a lot of people in Canton, Ohio. I hope they're having a lot of fun. Not really my scene this time. I went to the first one. It was a lot of fun, but this one's I believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And that's why I think I've said this before actually, but you know, that's why I like to podcast. That's why I like to do this. Like I realize that there are people out there watching. I know that several hundred people are going to watch this show. I know that several thousand people listen to the SuperFlex Super Show. But the fact that I can't see you makes it so much easier. If you were standing here, if all of you were standing here in front of me right now, I would just freeze up. If you were just asking me fantasy questions, I would be like, somebody get me out of here. I can't handle this. So that's why this outlet is so perfect for me. And that's why I have so much fun doing these shows, these live shows for SuperFlex Super Friday nights. That's why I like, being able to talk in DMs or even on Twitter. If you at me with questions or thoughts or whatever, I always enjoy that so much. It's the only way that I feel comfortable being able to do this, if I'm being totally honest. So I always appreciate it. I always appreciate the opportunity and appreciate the time, appreciate the questions and the thoughts. Lots of good stuff. And let's just wrap this one up early. We'll get back to it next Friday night, as always. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me in the chat and for your questions. I'm at SuperFlex Dude on Twitter. You can catch me there. You can also check out the SuperFlex Super Show, where we talk even more, just SuperFlex in general. So until next week, guys, stay sexy and super flexy.